Thank you so much, Rahsaan. I want to thank the ACLU, and I want to thank everyone who's stepping forward to push a vote yes on number 4. A vote yes is a vote to commence ending the war on drugs. And I quote the late rapper Tupac, instead of a war on poverty, they got a war on drugs so the police could bother me. And that is happening all too often in our neighborhoods and our communities. 8% of the population is black in the state of Massachusetts, yet they are 24% of the arrests when it comes to marijuana-related I don't believe, and it'll be a crime in a few, but when it comes down to it, it is currently a crime. In 2001, blacks were 2.2 times more likely to be arrested for possession, but now in 2014, they're 3.3 times more likely to be arrested for a marijuana-related crime. This is a two-tiered system. In the suburbs, marijuana crimes get fixed, they get taken care of, and the future of the young people are thought of relative to issues related to marijuana. But in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, and the Roxbury, Dorchesters, and Mattapans across the state of Massachusetts, all too often, young people get involved in the revolving door of going into this building, a trial court, and never coming out. And never coming out of the system, never being able to start their lives in the way that they should start them, not having the opportunity to have jobs and beginning their families in the way that they should. We have an opportunity to change this today. This is a mantra of, do we continue disparities or do we move forward for opportunities? This is an industry that will create over $100 million in revenue over the course of the next 3 years. It is an industry that will provide jobs, and uniquely in this legislation also gives an individual who has made a mistake in the past, who actually has had a marijuana offense, the opportunity to work in that industry. And I want to give huge kudos to the authors of this, because that is not the case in most states. We have an opportunity in the state of Massachusetts to, instead of follow, it's an opportunity to step up and lead. And I'm proud to stand with the Yes on 4 coalition, and we need to do the right thing. And this is not only about marijuana, this is about fixing wrongs. It's not only about marijuana, it's about fixing disparities. It's not only about marijuana, it's about fixing injustices. And we have the opportunity to turn the trains around on November 8th. And so vote yes on 4. Thank you so much.
I've had a lot of distinct pleasures in my life and career, and one of them was as a former assistant district attorney in Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. And I got to see up close and personal how the prosecution of marijuana affected so many lives. So many young people that would come before courts just like this one that we're standing in front of, who would end up having a Corbie and then be disproportionately impacted and have opportunities, as Councilor Jackson just suggested, to thrive and to succeed, impinged upon because of these criminal records. But there was one individual that I spent time in front of as a judge who did everything that he could to try to diminish those impacts. And now I would like to bring forward former Judge Leslie Harris.
It is my honor to be able to be here to encourage our community to come out in support of number 4. As a judge, I saw so many young black and brown people come into my court charged with marijuana possession and possession with intent to distribute. One of the realities of Massachusetts is that once you are arraigned, that arraignment stays on your record for the rest of your life. We do not have expungement in Massachusetts. That's another fight I think we need to take up. But right now, what I want to talk about is the disparate treatment of children in my community. I live in Roxbury. I've lived here for the last 46 years. I've been a public defender, a prosecutor, a probation officer, a teacher, and for 20 years I sat as a judge, sitting in this court and other courts around the Commonwealth. I saw firsthand the disparate treatment of young people who look like me and talk like me. I'm the father of 3 children. I don't want them to be criminalized for what should be a non-criminal act. Just as alcohol is treated, marijuana should be treated. Now, I will say this right off. I'm one of those people who believes that all organic drugs should be legalized and sold at the drugstore. But right now, we're talking about marijuana. And I want to encourage everyone to support this. One of my last cases to go before the SJC is called Humberto H. Humberto H. Young man arrested at school for possession with intent to distribute marijuana. None of the dressings that go with the sale of marijuana was found on him. He had no money, no scale, no extra papers, nothing. He had a small amount of marijuana, but he was charged with possession with intent to sell. When he came into court, I asked, why is he here? Why did he not just get a ticket instead of being arrested? They insisted on arraigning them, and at that time it was my belief that judges didn't have the right to refuse to arraign someone, but I told them that as soon as you arraign it, I'm going to dismiss it. We went forward with the arraignment, I dismissed it, and they appealed to dismiss it. The Supreme Judicial Court said, no, judges are not rubber stamps for the DA's office or the clerk's office.
Right.
That if we don't find probable cause or that it's in the best interest of a child, we do not have to arraign them. A major case, it's a major tool for judges. I believe we have to protect our children and young adults. Once you are branded with the Corbie, once you have a record in this state, your life is changed forever. There are doors you don't even know you want to go through that are closed to you. Just this week, a young man who's an electrician up in Salem, outside the city, qualified for a job. He had a small incident when he was 21, and he's now in his late 40s or so. That one incident kept him from being able to have that job. We cannot continue to do that to our citizens. Young black and brown boys and girls are the most commonly arrested people in this Commonwealth, and we've got to stop it. I thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I hope everyone will vote yes on number 4. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Whitney Taylor, and I'm the political director of the ACLU of Massachusetts, and I use marijuana regularly. The reason I'm here today sharing this fact is because the opposition to question 4 continue to lie and use scare tactics to try and derail this important ballot initiative. I urge everyone to vote yes on question 4. People are arrested for marijuana possession every day in Massachusetts, but they don't look like me, and they don't look like the people who are leading the opposition, people with power, people with influence, people with the ability to use their whiteness in their favor. I am here to share and use my white privilege to stand in solidarity with the communities that have been hit as hard by marijuana arrests and by the failed war on drugs. And I want to stand here with my brave colleague who is going to share her story. She did not commit a crime. She did not do anything that I have not done many times. The only difference is where she lives and the color of her skin. Shanel graduated from the University of Pennsylvania and Northeastern University School of Law and began her career as a judicial law clerk in the Massachusetts Superior Court. She then joined the Boston law firm of Sugarman, Rogers, Barshack, and Cohen, serving as a civil litigator for Fortune 500 companies in the areas of business, insurance, employment law, before becoming employment counsel and director of human resources for the Massachusetts State Lottery Commission. After leaving the Lottery Commission, Shanel Shanel started her own law practice. And in 2012, she started Ardent, a company that develops devices for patients so that they can use their medicine in ways that are safe and practical. It is my honor to introduce my colleague and friend, Shanel Lindsay.
I'm here today with a heavy heart. Cannabis legalization is so clearly a social justice and civil rights issue, but in the last days and weeks, our opposition has been spinning lies crafted by our opposition and spread far and wide by even respected media outlets are attempting to hide and erase the damage that's happening to us in our communities. Every year, thousands of people in our state are arrested, punished, and prosecuted for cannabis use. And the majority of those people are people of color. Claims that since decriminalization, no one is being arrested, or to quote what Jason Lewis just said yesterday, this is not about whether adults can use cannabis, no one is bothering them today. These are dangerous lies that are spun and supporting a racist status quo. How do I know? It happened to me. I'm a mother, a lawyer, a businesswoman, and I'm also a person of color. In 2010, now this is after decriminalization, I was driving to the commuter rail to work, and all of a sudden I see blue lights flashing behind me. What should have been a normal traffic stop, the officer said that I turned right on red where there was a sign. Turned very sinister once he saw a small amount of cannabis in my open purse. The police officer ordered me out of my car, began to search my vehicle, even though I told him no, and when, after digging in my personal belongings, he found a small jar of cannabis, he slapped the cuffs on me and threw me in the back of the police cruiser. I was sitting there terrified, watching my car get impounded. And as we're driving down to the station, I'm pleading with him, asking him why he is arresting me, why he is not just giving me a ticket, but instead arresting me and bringing me down to the courthouse. We went down and got booked, and I asked them again, what is going to happen to me? And they told me that I was going to be brought down to the courthouse and arraigned, the same courthouse that I had appeared in many times before, but this time it was going to be as a criminal. Everything in my life flashed before me. I was about to lose my career, my child, my status. And this is not something that I plan to come and talk about today, but the continued dismissal of what is happening every day to our citizens, our fellow citizens, good people, made it necessary. That day, the only thing that saved me was being able to come up with the best legal argument that I could muster while sitting there in the cuffs digging into my arms on a cold metal slab while they were booking me. And that argument is that you are violating my civil rights. You have all the opportunity to know whether or not you should be using your discretion against me and charging me criminally, or you should be giving me a ticket. And thankfully, I was able to convince them to weigh it, and what do you know? It was half an ounce, less than the decriminalized amount. What would have happened that day if I had been a teacher or a secretary or a doctor and I did not know my rights? I would have been arraigned, and they had every intent to prosecute me to the fullest extent of the law. So what I say to Jason Lewis and the opposition to question 4 is, you will never be able to tell me that people are not being arrested and prosecuted for cannabis possession. If this happened to me in Sharon over 14 grams, you can only imagine what is happening to our young people of color around the state in different areas. There are nearly 1 million adults in Massachusetts who use cannabis. These are doctors, lawyers, blue collar, white collar. And each day we are forced into this area of illegality, which means that at any moment we could lose everything over something that is less harmful than alcohol, which in our society has no limits on the amount that we can have. So what I'm here today to say is no more lies. These are the facts. These are the people that are being harmed by these regressive policies. And these people deserve our protection. We will not stand anymore for lies and excuses. We'll protect our fellow citizens, and that protection comes with a vote of yes on question 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanel. Thank you for sharing that very heart-wrenching story and making yourself vulnerable for the sake of others. That experience that you had in the criminal justice system is known well by many, and one person who can speak to those experiences as a defender of justice, who knows the deep inner workings of the criminal justice system, I'm proud to call a colleague, Carl Williams, staff attorney with the ACLU of Massachusetts.
Thank you, Rahsaan, and thank you, everyone. I was standing. That was incredibly powerful to hear all of that. Tito Jackson just quoted Tupac, so I decided I'd go back to Peter Tosh, who said, "Don't criminalize it, legalize it, legalize it." Right? That was a long time ago, and that stuff is happening now across the country, right? And the one thing that I wanted to talk about is Rahsaan. I was the Roxbury defender for the Committee for Public Counsel Services for a long time, and the way I describe that to people is I had the blessing of defending my neighbors, right? Defending my neighbors in this court, the Roxbury Division of the Boston Municipal Court, Suffolk Superior Court, on very small and very serious charges. And I remember one young brother who, a neighbor of mine, was arrested. This is when marijuana was still fully criminalized, for possession of marijuana in Dudley Square, just behind us. And went through the court system. The case ultimately was continued without finding, so he had something that would appear on his record. But that's a person who possessed an incredibly small amount of marijuana. And still, today, in this Commonwealth, there are people with Corries, right? There are people with Corries for stuff that right now is not illegal. Right now, it is not a crime. Because the people of Massachusetts thought it shouldn't be a crime. So let's think about that for a second. Democratically, the most democratic way we can do something in this state is put something on a ballot initiative, have people vote for it. And people said this should not be a crime. What it really should be, by way of analogy, is a parking ticket, right? But my client that day did something that later became not criminal. But on his record today on his record, he has what is a continuing without finding and then ultimate dismissal. But employers can see that. Housing, if he applies for housing somewhere, housing folks can see that. If he was going to apply for security clearance for something, those folks can see that, right? That's a stain. It is a purposeful mark on him permanently, just like if you tattooed something on someone's body, probably even more permanent than that, because that you can get off, right? This, very difficult for him to get off. But that's what happened to this brother. That's something he still in ways is wrestling with. That affects his ability for employment. That affects his ability to get certain licensures in ways that could possibly, at the time affected his ability to get a driving license, to get a barber's license, to get any other kind of clearances that he might need. I think that's important, because what happens when we do that to human beings? The list is so long, I can't even go into all of it, but some of them are. People become less employable, right? And if you create that structure for someone, what do people do, right? People are going to go into gray market, right? People are going to go into things that, well, what they call it black market. I'm not going to call it the black market. But people go into informal structures of economies, and we don't want that. We want people to believe in the system. We want the system to work for folks. And I think that is a core issue here. Because right now, actually there's a Boston police truck driving in, I could say to them, just as I'm saying to you, when we have systems that arrest, and I'll say it specifically, people of color, but what we're specifically talking about here, what we're specifically talking about in the data, are black folks and brown folks, Hispanic and Latino folks, and black folks in our communities. When people are arrested for something, that those people, when there's some kids in the park and the police come up and they say, oh, we're arresting you for marijuana possession because you had over an ounce, do you think that those young people think, man, a lot of these cops use weed. Man, a lot of these people in this court use weed, but I'm getting arrested for it. A lot of these lawyers here use weed. A lot of these people maybe behind me, and a lot of these people in front of me maybe use weed. Those young people know that, and they go, oh, I see how this is. It just isn't fair. There's a game we're playing, and there are different rules. There are different rules for you, and there are different rules for me. So what that says to people, and I think this is really important for what is happening in our country now, police are saying, we want to build trust in our communities. We want the communities to trust us. Here's a clue. Support decriminalization and legalization of marijuana, and that will build trust, because people will say, oh, now we live in a society based on rules. Now we live in a society based on laws and based on morals that everyone, at least in terms of marijuana possession for personal use, is treated on the same level. People in our communities will start to say, hey, I'm not getting arrested for it, for something I know a lot of people in our communities are doing. That will go an enormous way to building trust. Not these, coffee with a cop or ice cream with a cop, like things that are much more superficial. This is something deep-rooted that is happening every day in our communities. So I think building trust in that way, the other thing that will do is if there are so many less arrests and prosecutions for marijuana, there will be so many less, so much less of a disparity. But I think the last piece I want to leave you with is we need to be intentional about that piece too. Just creating a law that says tax and regulate is a great thing. We need to be in our minds, in our media, and in our litigation and possibly future legislation, intentional about the idea that in the war on drugs, there are extreme racial disparities. In the minds of many who created the structure of the war on drugs, it was about race. It was created with intentionality to be about race. There are quotes from Nixon that you can go back and look at, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, but it was created intentionally. So to dismantle that, we must be intentional about the racial disparities that were purposely built into that. So I think a great first step in that is voting yes on 4 to legalize it. Otherwise, in our minds, we need to be intentional and clear to remove those racial disparities. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. And I think that's a very important point that you raise about being intentional beyond just going to the polls on November 8th and voting yes on 4, but there is work that has to happen after that. And one of the people that has been involved in some of the groundwork that has even led to this point and also is focused on some of the work that needs to happen after this point, particularly as it relates to increasing opportunities for communities of color once legalization comes into fruition, is Shaleen Tito.
Thanks, Rahsaan, and thanks everybody for coming today. My name is Shaleen Tito. I own a diversity-focused recruiting firm for the cannabis industry called THC Staffing Group. I'm a founder of the Minority Cannabis Business Association, and I'm one of the attorneys on the broad coalition who drafted such a rule. Across the country, we are hearing that people of color are being shut out of the legal cannabis industry. When we were writing this initiative, we decided to do something about it. We made Massachusetts the first state to address this exclusion by requiring in question 4 that when the regulations are written, along with the security requirements and health and safety standards and the other protections, there will also be policies focused on opening this new potentially billion-dollar industry in Massachusetts to the very communities that have been targeted by the war on drugs. These policies could include job placement programs, skills-based training programs, or assistance for new minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurs. When we talk about marijuana and race, we often rightly focus on the devastation that has taken place in the criminal justice system. But people of color are more than just arrest statistics. Question 4 will create thousands of new jobs and harness the talents and creativity and innovation potential of communities of color. We'll see new jobs in logistics, security, transportation, software, packaging, really any aspect where people are eager to learn. And in fact, after legalization in Colorado, unemployment there reached its lowest point in 15 years. Wow. So we can help people to move away from the gray market and into this newly legal economy, changing lives for the better and bringing economic justice. With question 4, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build a new industry from the ground up with an unwavering focus on accessibility and equality every step of the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaleen. And the impact on communities of color is very pronounced, and to talk about the advocacy and support and the impacts on communities of color from the Union of Minority Neighborhoods is David Corbie.
Hi, my name is David Corbie. I'm a community organizer at the Union of Minority Neighborhoods. And today I just want to give you a little bit of background of me and my experience. So I'm blessed enough to not have been arrested in my life or have to have gone through the criminal system. Because luckily, well, not say luckily, but I went through the MECO system and I was taken to a suburban school where predominantly white, you don't really see many officers or cops or arrests. And even though you know there's a large amount of drugs being sold by, let's say, the student population, they're usually not the ones going away for 40 years or life. But it's like, when I would come home, you would see all these people getting arrested, all these people going through the criminal justice system. And I find it incredibly insane that this has to happen here in Boston, because it's supposed to be a very liberal place where everyone has the opportunity to learn and to be an active participant in the civic civic engagement society. Sorry, it's okay. But I guess personally, I feel very fearful, you know, because I was afforded a lot of privileges, being able to go to college, being able to find a job like this that allows me to not only go to college, but then also to give back to my community and invest in my community and help people of my community. Being a 23-year-old black male, it's very hard for me to see and walk around and see people of my own, I guess, community and generation having to go through the system and not being able to get a job, you know, having a much more difficult time to go to college, get loans, you know, all of these things that set them back. And really, it's this war on drugs, but it's really a war on black people. Yeah. And we need to change that. You know, it's out of date. It needs to be changed because everybody needs to be afforded the right to life, liberty, justice, and the pursuit of happiness. And with the society that we have today, the pursuit of happiness usually involves getting an education and usually having the right to go to college, go to grad school, because right now it's like you need a master's degree in order to really compete and be able to work in these jobs that pay you a decent enough wage in order to survive. I'm here on behalf of Horace Small, who is the executive director, and he once told me that it's getting so hard to live in West Roxbury that even if you make $75K a year, you still can't afford to live around here, and it's being gentrified. And so from where I live in Dorchester, it's also being gentrified. These are the things that we need to change, and I think giving black men the opportunity to be able to compete in this world is very important. And I know that I've dedicated my life to working on behalf of people of the black community, and of course, young black males who I see in myself and I can empathize with. And I think that it's very important that we vote yes on 4, because, you know, and just going back to quote Tupac, which I feel like is, you know, something that's happening today, we got to start making changes. So.
Thank you, David Corbie. Thank you very much. And so, again, the ACLU is proud to have released this report about the disparities that exist in the criminal justice system as it relates to marijuana. But we are also very proud to partner with and be in support of the Yes on 4 campaign. And so to close us out, I'd like to bring I'd like to bring forward Kim Napoli from the Yes on 4 campaign.
Thank you. First, let me just say thank you to everyone who has spoken. You guys are phenomenal. You are the bread and butter of this campaign. You brought it to light, used your words to convey the message that is what we know is true, we know is facts, and thank you so much for your honesty, your integrity, your time. Good morning, all. My name is Kim Napoli. I'm the Outreach Director for the Yes on 4 campaign. And again, I want to thank you for being here also, and for helping to make this world a better place by voting Yes on 4. As a resident, raising a young family right here in Dudley Square, I'm voting yes for my community. A lot of my reasons are the same that you've heard. I'm just going to boil it all down. The fact is, as people of color, our history is one that is wrought with abuse and mistreatment. Even today, especially today, our black men, our black women, even our children are shot and killed in the streets, and even the playgrounds, for the mere fact that the color of our skin is one that is associated with criminality. It's an unfortunate association. Too often it has been people of color who are persecuted and have their futures ruined for that association between cannabis and brown skin. For too long, the prohibition of cannabis has allowed law enforcement to target people of color in what is just another example of the systemic racism that plagues this country. A vote for yes on 4 this November is a way to change this. Make no mistake, I'm well aware that there's much more work to be done to get our brothers and sisters on the same playing field as our lighter counterparts, but this campaign, this vote for yes on 4 is an excellent place to start. A regulated and taxed market for cannabis will free up law enforcement to focus on real and dangerous crime. It'll also stop our youth from needlessly being tossed into the criminal justice system and that life sentence that comes with it that you've heard discussed today. Voting yes on 4 will also provide economic opportunity in the form of jobs in the growing cannabis industry. These are real jobs with real benefits and real opportunity for our communities to advance for people who need it. A yes vote on 4 is a vote for social justice and economic justice. It's beyond time to end this wasteful, misguided, ineffective prohibition on cannabis in Massachusetts. So I'm going to ask you all to please help create a better future by voting yes on 4 in November. Thank you.
Any questions?
There's some evidence that in Colorado the racial disparities in arrests actually increased after legalization. What makes you think that won't happen in Massachusetts?
Hi. We have seen that disparity rates, and so this is not going to fix the problem at all. But what we have seen in Colorado is the fact that they now know where to start in fixing the problem. When you have a system where it's taxed and regulated, and we know that all of the rules remain the same, and there isn't a whole bunch of judgment calls to be made by police officers on the street whether or not to arrest anybody because it is taxed and regulated, that is the direction we need to move in. We then need to, as other people have said here, this is not going to solve racial disparity in policing. This is the first step. But what we can do is take this first step so we're all on the same playing field with the number one way that people are often brought into the criminal justice system by the use of cannabis, because it is a fact, as it has been said, over 1 million people in Massachusetts use cannabis every day. As I said before, I am somebody that uses marijuana. I have never faced any of the problems that others have faced in this Commonwealth because of where they live and the color of their skin. Are there any other questions?
Arrest rates for adults in Colorado have gone down significantly. The increase in arrests that you're talking about are for juveniles, there's no analogous provision in the Colorado law that says if you're under the age of 18, under the age of 21, that it's a civil fine. So that also needs to be taken into account in in the increase in arrests for juveniles in Colorado.
Any other questions?
This is just a general question. Does it make more sense to use our state and the resources we have to focus on the medical program and getting the research that's necessary for full legalization across the country?
I will tell you that there are many people who don't want to go on the DPH list for their medicine. There are veterans. There are undocumented immigrants. There are all kinds of people. There are people who are former federal employees that get a federal pension. They all don't want to go on the DPH list, but they need their medicine. And we believe that taxing and regulating this and leaving that decision between a patient and their doctor, including the DPH, will mean that more people are able to get medicine. And unfortunately, the medical marijuana program in Massachusetts, although we voted for it almost 4 years ago, we only have 7 dispensaries right now. It's been glacially slow, and we believe that this will address all of those problems.
Well, I'm saying since we have a medical program in existence to do the physical research and prove that it's a medicine, so that there's more of an effort across the board, across the country to fully legalize the plant because we have evidence of its benefits.
The Cannabis Control Commission will be allowed to license research, and so we believe that there will be much more research in Massachusetts about the effects of marijuana, both the medicinal effects and other effects.
Even if this question does pass, the issue of public use is still out there in that this would not make public use of force legal. I know that's one of the considerations they're having in Colorado right now. There's a lot of non-arrested citations in public use, and as I guess you suggested, there's racial disparities in those public use citations. Can I just ask people to address the public use issue and what would come, even if this were to pass?
One of the realities is that right now, the same is true about alcohol. There's a disparate arrest or citation for public use of alcohol in our communities as opposed to other communities. So it would probably be the same. This is not a cure-all, but it raises the issue that we can then address. Right now, if you were sitting on your front porch drinking a beer in our community, you'd probably be arrested. If you had a party in your backyard and had guests over drinking, in my community, you might be arrested, even though it's on private property. It's in public, and I've watched that happen. So I don't expect any difference in marijuana use. And so I would encourage people not to give them the opportunity to arrest them.
Good.
Thank you.